Donkey Kong Country 2. I made a whole video about my whole experience playing it very recently, and a lot of people seem to have not gotten to the end because people think I think it's the worst game of all time. I do not think that. I actually really thoroughly enjoyed the game, and if you watched for more than 20 minutes, you probably would have seen that, but unfortunately, not all of us got all the way there, which is okay. So today I'm here to do a bit of a bite-sized review of my experience playing Donkey Kong Country 2 in 2024. Is it a good game? Should you play it? All those questions will be answered, so let's get into the review. First of all, I do want to talk about the gameplay with the game, and the gameplay is honestly very, very good, and it feels pretty tight, all things considered. Now, in the first Donkey Kong, things were very horizontal. You were platforming basically from left to right, and in Donkey Kong Country 2, it's a lot more verticality, which I think is really cool and adds to maybe differentiating the two. In this game, there's a lot of different gameplay mechanics because instead of simply playing as Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong as you did in the first one with very slight differences, Dixie and Diddy play almost entirely different. So Dixie plays sort of, people equate it to an easy mode from my understanding, but unfortunately, I actually thought Dixie was a lot harder in my experience for some reason, just because I couldn't get a hang of sort of whenever to use that floating or whatever, and she was also a lot slower than Diddy. Now with Dixie, she can spin her hair, and that allows to have some sort of buffer with the float mechanic, but you can't just jump out of it, you have to float all the way down to the floor, which honestly pissed me off quite a bit. Diddy, on the other hand, is basically just a very fast Donkey Kong. I mean, he's just quick, and he plays very similarly to how he did in the first one. He's really good to play as. He's one of my favorites, but you have to be on it with the platforming. And then also, when you have both of them, you can throw one of them at other enemies, up to get certain barrels that might be out of reach, over to get, like coins and stuff that you might need. So there's that whole added mechanic on top of all of these different animal buddies you play as, and they all play differently. So the bird, it can spit out things, spit out little, I don't know what those are, little rocks at people, or loogies, I don't know what it's spitting, but the birds spit out little projectiles at the enemies that come at them, and you can fly. The snake, you can jump really, really high if you charge it up, or you just basically jump every time you move with him. And then there's the spider. And the spider is my least favorite, but it has like the most different mechanics, so you can shoot webs out, or you can shoot platforms out of the webs, and then you make yourself little platforms that you platform across. You can only shoot 3, otherwise you die a really quick death. I learned that a lot later in the game as well. So overall, there's a ton of different gameplay mechanics in this game, which are cool because they change up the feeling of the game quite often. Now, if you've been platforming quite a bit vertically for the last couple levels, they're probably either going to throw an animal buddy level or maybe a minecart level your way, and the minecart levels are pretty cool in my experience. I liked them quite a bit. I thought it was fun because they also did change up things quite a bit per level, even with the minecart and things of that sort, and then there was this thing where you're racing on the rat school. That's pretty cool as well. And so overall, gameplay-wise, it is super, super varied. That led to it being very difficult at times because it's constantly getting used to these new mechanics of how you play as, and then all the while, there's still 40 million enemies that you have to beat. There's still all of these things that you have to do to get to the end of the level, which is pretty challenging. And overall, I'm going to say something that people seem to be pissed about and get really sexist about. But I think the game is really hard. And that's not just because I'm a girl. I mean, it's 2024, you fuckers. Like, it's crazy that we're still... So there's all that goes in this game. And then on top of which, the platforming is really good for the most part, and it's constantly switching itself up with new and different exciting levels, very vertical platforming, as I've been saying, and so that all just adds to this really fun little experience that ends up being Donkey Kong Country 2. The difficulty comes in not exactly in each of these levels because hypothetically, I think if you were able to save after every level, which I learned how to do later in the game, but if you were able to do that, that would cut down on a lot of the frustration in the game. Most of my frustration in the game is that it's hard level after hard level after hard level, and you are constantly being thrown all around until you understand and can memorize every single aspect of each of these levels, right? And so once you do that, they're not as hard to get through. And I mean, you go back, you've played the game when you were a fucking kid and you thought you were amazing at it, right? You go back now and you'll probably be able to get through it decently quick because you understand and you have this foundation. But if you're playing it for the first time in 2024, it's difficult. It is a hard game, and I will continue to say that, but there's a lot of memorization that goes into each and every single one of these levels. So you really have to learn the level, and that takes you dying quite a few times for the majority of people. And so when you're dying over and over and over again, it can lead to some very frustrating moments. It can lead to you getting really fucking pissed off and having to take a break from the game, which is totally fine in the grand scope of things. And it's crazy that people think it isn't. And people think, you know what I think is funny? I talked about this in one of my last videos. People really get mad at me when I haven't played these older games, but then when I have and I share my experience playing them, and even when I like them, I get the most sexist, outrageous fucking comments I've ever seen in my life. So on top of all of that, with the platforming, memorization, all of those things, there's just a lot that you have to be thinking about in this game, because there's constantly new enemies, constantly new gimmicks per level, which is really cool, but it also creates this really difficult game that's hard to get through. I mean, the game itself isn't that long. I mean, there's only like 5 or so worlds, I believe, and you know, if you beat every level the first try, it'd probably take you like under 10 hours, but for me it ended up taking 20 because I kept dying over and over and over again. But that loop of gameplay is basically that you die over and over and over again, and you learn small things every single time you die, and by learning those small things and by, you know, overcoming them each and every time and getting you a little bit further in the level and a little bit further, that will start to allow you to really start to memorize every single aspect of the level and eventually beat it, which is great. And I think that's a great gameplay mechanic. The issue is, once you do that and then you go to the next level and you have to do the same thing but your lives are like 0, that's where it starts to get frustrating. And I know there's glitches and there's things you can do that'll allow you to have more lives and all of that, but still, I don't know if that's something that, you know, that's not something that everybody's going to know going into immediately, right? And so playing this game for the first time, that was my experience with the gameplay. I thought it was great, but very, very frustrating at times, and I think that's totally a valid thing to think. Graphically, I think it is one of the most impressive games on the SNES. It looks gorgeous, and it still holds up very well today. I think the SNES in general, the style of games on that console, do hold up very well to today's standards, but still, just like the way that they were able to layer everything with the foreground and the background and all that kind of stuff, just like the different aspects that were beautifully shown throughout this game, I think are really a testament to how well this was designed. Rare knocked it out of the park, especially in the design department with this game. There's levels where you're sort of like, there's chains in front of you in the foreground, which is really cool. Makes things a little difficult when you can't see all the enemies coming after you really quickly, but it is pretty cool. Music-wise, it's also very great. I think the music in this game is awesome. It's very enjoyable, really, from start to finish, and the music just adds to the overall environment of the game, which is awesome. I think that's exactly what music needs to do. It completely served its purpose, and I think it's probably one of the best soundtracks of the SNES. Haven't played too many SNES games, I guess, in the grand scope of things, but in all the ones I've played, it's definitely my favorite one so far. So overall, I'm going to give Donkey Kong Country 2 on the SNES that I played through NSO a solid 9 out of 10. I think it's a great game, and I think, you know, if you are a Donkey Kong fan, totally play it. But you know what you can do is you can just save after every single one of those levels, and that's going to help you a lot in the grand scope of things, especially if you haven't played this game before. Now, if you played it before and you're a seasoned veteran and you are over 35 and you're going to leave me a really bitchy comment about what I just said, I want you to think about your age and your maturity and how they're not matching up, okay? If you like this video, drop it a like. Subscribe to the channel, as always, for more Donkey Kong shit. I'm going to review, actually not review, I'm going to stream Donkey Kong Country 3, and I know I've been saying that over and over again. I swear to God it'll happen very soon. But check out this video. It's a banger, it's a vibe, it's a good time, and I will see you over there. Goodbye.